So here we are, 2 years, almost 2 years into the game's life. We've had some ups, downs, problems arose, have been resolved, and generally speaking, I think Destiny is moving in the right direction. But there's still one thing that frustrates me. Generally speaking, we still have no idea what the is going on. So, today's video is going to seek to explain the current storyline of Destiny, as well as any backstory that is related. Each expansion of Destiny has been an isolated story, or rather, they feel like they have been isolated stories. We started with just Destiny, let's get into the world, start the world building process. Vault of Glass is the first endgame experience. The Vex are there. The Vex can control reality, but only in the Vault of Glass itself. So, why did we go in there? To make sure that they couldn't do anything on the outside? Or maybe to find out what happened to Kabir's fire team? Or maybe just because we wanted to know what was going on there because it seems cool? Either way, fair enough. We don't know if Atheon made the Vault of Glass or if the Vault of Glass made Atheon. We don't know anything. Really, it's all hypothesis in the game world. Atheon possibly regulated the Vex network, a central construct watching over the confluxes. What are the confluxes? Well, we don't really know the answer to that either, at least nothing concrete. So we kill Atheon, and kill the heart in the Black Garden, and okay, everything's cool for now. But what was the Black Heart? Why was it so important? Well, it was a piece of the ever-ambiguous darkness, and it was super important to the Vex. Why was it so important? We have absolutely no idea, and the only guess that we have is by Ikora Rey, who says that the thing was so strong and so beyond any comprehension that the Vex were like, holy crap, this thing's so weird, it must be a god or something. They researched, and they searched, and they searched, and they were just baffled by it, so they just worshipped it. But because it had to protect itself and could only summon one soul being at a time to do it, that meant that it felt threatened by our presence. It was also feeding off of the Traveler's Light, evidently, so we killed it so that it would stop doing that, and then the Traveler could maybe do something again. After the Black Heart was killed, the Garden became a part of Mars, but we really haven't done anything with it since. Rather, the only reason we've had to go back is to stop the Undying Mind from reviving the heart and then returning the Garden to its inter-transdimensional state. So that whole storyline is sorta wrapped up. We don't know what Atheon is, we don't know what the Black Heart is, other than it was sucking some light from the Traveler, so it had to go. Barely even know what the Black Garden is. Hell, the only reason we even found out about the Black Garden is because of Pujari, a warlock who literally drowned himself on Venus to have a vision of the Black Garden in the first place. Anyway, all of that's in the past now, and I don't know really how much it matters at this point in time, but I had a hard time caring about it in the first place anyway because it was so ambiguous at the time, and still kinda is. Now we hit the Dark Below, and now we can start getting a little more context for some stuff going on, although most of this context wasn't available at the time of the Dark Below expansion. A lot of it is from the Taken King and from the Book of Sorrows, aka the Calcified Fragment grimoire. Crota is here, and he's mean, and that's not really cool, but where did he come from? See, a long time ago, we discovered that the Hive were on the moon during the Battle of Burning Lake, which is a small battle. So the Vanguard said, yo, we gotta get those dudes out of here, it's not cool, let's attack them. But Lord Shaxx told them not to attack because the Hive had lots of knights and they were really powerful, and if the Vanguard fought, they were gonna die. But the Vanguard ignored this and got wrecked super hard by Crota and his army of like 1,000 knights. But that doesn't even explain why Crota is on the moon in the first place. And you're gonna have to bear with me on this because the backstory is kinda deep. You have Oryx and Crota, father and son, super buddy-buddy. Oryx training his son to conquer worlds and chase the Traveler and all that good stuff. But one day, Crota and his sisters were screwing around in the Ascendant Plane and cut open a portal thinking that he could gain new powers, Crota that is. That didn't happen, but rather it opened up a portal which allowed Vex to enter the Ascendant Plane. He was told to make this portal by his aunt Savathun, when in reality, Savathun tricked Crota into doing this. Why? Well, at first glance, it looks like she does that because she's just an asshole, I guess. But to really get more out of this, you need to understand how hive relationships work. Death and killing to the hive is different than death and killing to everybody else. When the hive kill each other, it is an act of friendship or love, because in the hive world, the game, so to speak, is to become the strongest. You become stronger by being killed, because the only place these guys can truly die is in the Ascendant Plane, hence why Oryx was actually killed when we killed him. When not in the Ascendant Plane, they don't technically die, just think of it as them training to be stronger. Each hive also has a worm inside them, which is essentially the motivator. The worm needs to be satiated, so if you don't do that, the worm is just going to eat you instead and you'll cease to live. So, Oryx says at one point that he had crippled Savathun so that she couldn't challenge him anymore. But Savathun is very cunning and used Crota as a means to challenge Oryx once again, except not directly to his face. So Savathun tricked Crota into opening a portal with the Vex so that Oryx would learn how to defeat the Vex, hence making him stronger. Think of it this way. The Hive literally pull world-ending pranks on each other to make themselves stronger should they succeed. Oryx had to come back to his throne to make sure that the Vex couldn't do anything malicious now that they were inside the Ascendant Plane and his throne and all that kind of stuff. This brings us back to Crota. As punishment for screwing up and letting a bunch of Vex in, Oryx threw Crota through the portal and told him to go make something of himself or to just die trying. So Crota is tricked into opening this portal by Savathun so that the Vex could come in and mess stuff up, because Savathun still wanted to challenge Oryx because they love each other. In reality, the challenge set forth by Oryx for Crota could be viewed as an act of love, because that's how the Hive express love for each other. He ended up on the moon after years and years and years of conquering many, many worlds and planets and building shrines and all that kind of stuff. Hence the Shrine of Oryx, for example. Okay, cool. Meanwhile, Ariana 3 captured a wizard during battle, the secondary battle being known as the Great Disaster because they got wrecked because they didn't listen to Lord Shaxx, and tortured the wizard trying to find out how to kill Crota. They find out where Crota is and learned about the Oversoul Throne and stuff like that, but not how to kill Crota. So that's where Toland the Shattered comes into play. Toland is obsessed with Hive Arcana, super obsessed, so he knew of a way to defeat Crota. Ariana and her fire team went down into the Hellmouth and then into the Ascendant Plane to try to kill Crota, and they failed. Eris was the only one to escape, and I'm pretty sure she mentions that in the game many, many times over. So, with Eris's help, your team first stops the summoning of Crota to Earth by destroying the crystal in the Hellmouth. Then you go into the Oversoul Throne, which I believe is part of the Ascendant Plane, and you go and kill Crota, and because this happens in the Ascendant Plane, he actually dies. This makes Oryx very mad, and ultimately leads to the events of the Taken King. But for now, Crota is not coming to Earth to kill all of us, so that's a win in our book. That sequence concludes The Dark Below. Then we get to the House of Wolves, which is a little bit easier to understand than all of the stuff that I just talked about. So the House of Wolves started out as their own house living in the Jovians, which is pretty far away from the reef. It's by Jupiter, but we don't know much about it post-collapse because we haven't bothered to fly out there just yet. Anyway, they were going to join the other houses in the Battle of the Twilight Gap, which is a super important battle that you probably heard about that happened, but Marasov, Queen of the Reef, was like, no. The House of Wolves were on their way to Earth, but one guy needed to go to the bathroom or something, so they made a pit stop on Ceres. Mara caught them on this planet and literally blew it up, killing their Kel and half of their forces. This was known as the Scatter. Marasov took over control of the house and tried to integrate some of them into the reef, and for the most part it worked, but there were a few rebels. Then Skolas shows up and is like, yo, I'm in charge now. But where the hell did Skolas come from? Well, after Marasov blew up their planet, there were 3 contenders for being the House Kel of the Wolves. You had Skolas, you have Paraxis, I don't know how to say this. You had Skolas, you had Paresis, and you had Irsis. And I apologize if I'm screwing up those names. There was a civil war between these three. Irsis got a head start because she controlled all the Orbix servitors, which had permissions on the Calyx servitors. Basically, she had an advantage over all the others. Skolas wanted her dead first and succeeded in killing her in the Battle of Eos Clash. However, this battle hurt Skolas almost as badly because Picus, his commander, was incredibly reckless, bringing many losses to Skolas' side. This is why Picus is a dreg in-game. He was demoted after this battle. Paresis was up next. The Silent Fang, which was Skolas' stealth assassin unit, attacked an Awoken space station. This led the Awoken to retaliate, but they were tricked into attacking the wrong enemy, and instead of attacking the Silent Fang, attacked Paresis, leaving Skolas as the final participant, so he just declared that he was the Kel. The Reef, on the other hand, was doing a lot of investigating on their own and kinda realized what was going on. Through a myriad of events, the Battle of Bamberga's Wrath, Siege of Pallas, the Hildian Campaign, the Fortuna Plummet, and finally the Cybele Uprising, Skolas was locked up in the Prison of Elders for the first time. The first 4 events captured a lot of Skolas' personnel, and Varix was contacted after the Fortuna Plummet, Varix already not liking Skolas. Since Varix was on the Awoken side, he warned them about the attack Skolas was planning on making on Cybele, a military fortress. These events combined are known as the Reef Wars. So it's years later after the wars are over, and the imprisoned Skolas is gifted to the Nine to commemorate their win against the Fallen, which I know isn't exactly clear, but then for some reason, still unknown to anyone, don't know who did it or why, Skolas was freed by one of the agents of the Nine and then given a ship to escape. Upon hearing about Skolas' escape, a lot of the previously former non-hostile fallen wolves in the Reef turned hostile and were thrown into the Prison of Elders, although many escaped. It is at this point where the House of Wolves expansion starts, where Marasov calls out to the Guardians asking for help. But why did Marasov need to do that? Why did it seem like they were so isolated from everybody else? Why did it seem like such a big deal that the tower was being contacted? Well, during the Reef Wars, in one particular instance, the Awoken and the Guardians were fighting together. There was one sequence where the wolves were very much fortified in its secure location, and Petrovenge didn't want to send anyone in to try to fight because it would have been stupid to do so. Instead, she sent down a fighter wing to shoot at them, and that was a success. Unfortunately, there were 3 fire teams of Guardians near that position as well, and her order got them all killed, resulting in her demotion and being sent away from the Reef, in addition to increasing tensions between the Reef and the city. However, Petrovenge was eventually reinstated when shiz started to go down. So you kill all of the escaped dudes from the prison, you capture Skolas again, you kill him, that's that. Mara gives control of the Prison of Elders to Varix because she's just completely over it at this point, and he's pretty down with that because he wants to use it as a way to remember and honor old fallen ways by having you go in there and fight stuff. Finally, we move to the Taken King, which is technically pretty self-explanatory. Right before the Taken King starts, though, Eris asks Marasov to help her kill Oryx, which is what prompts that space battle scene before the expansion starts. You killed Crota, Oryx isn't really happy about that, so he's like, yo, that wasn't cool, I want to kill you now. Granted, there is significant backstory to where Oryx came from, along with a ton of other stuff in the Book of Sorrows, aka the grimoire of the calcified fragments that you've hopefully gotten for your Moments of Triumph. I'm not going to go over the Book of Sorrows in this video because this video is already pretty long enough. That leads us to today, with Rise of Iron on the horizon. The Rise of Iron story will delve into the background of the Iron Lords, their story, and combating Siva as it has returned, thanks to the Fallen who have nothing better to do other than dig around looking for stuff because they're bored or whatever. But this kind of leads me back to the beginning of this video, where I said that so far, Destiny just feels like a series of independent stories happening in the Destiny universe. The Book of Sorrows did wonders for the Hive in explaining their backstory and how things came to be, and I hope we see some more stuff like it in the future. Of course, it would be nice if it was all in game, but at the end of the day, a lot of it is exposition. It's setup, it's plot that leads into the events of actually playing the game. If they were to put the Book of Sorrows in game, not sure how it would be done other than just an hour-long movie or something like that, excluding the concept of just sticking the grimoire in game. But for a while, something like the Crota storyline just felt like its own thing, the House of Wolves felt like its own thing, the Vault of Glass felt like its own thing. They're all connected, and yet not connected at the same time. They all reference things from the distant past, learning about what the Vex are capable of, learning where the Hive come from and their origins, a little bit about what's going on with the Fallen, but not entirely. Now we're learning about the Iron Lords and what they did. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, when are we going to start learning about what's going on right now? Yeah, I get it. Siva is back because the Fallen dug it up. Right, okay. But that just feels like another isolated story. Obviously, we'll start learning more and more about stuff in the coming years, but I guess I thought at the time that we would start learning a little bit more about the current events of the world sooner than we currently are. There's still plenty of time though, I know. Anyway, thanks for listening to me ramble. Hopefully you learned something a little cool. If you enjoyed the video, a positive rating would be very appreciated. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.